Chapter 11. By the time Lincoln arrived home, Roy was on the porch screwing new hinges into the front door. Flacco was watching him. Lincoln's mother, on her knees and bundled into a ski jacket, was holding a flashlight steady on Roy's work. She looked up, startled, and saw Lincoln. She let out her breath and said, "Ay, ya llegaste. You're home. Are you okay? Tell me what happened." Lincoln climbed the steps, careful not to bend his knee, and took the flashlight from his mother while he ran his free hand through Flacco's fur, which was damp from rolling on the lawn. He watched what Roy was doing. "Well, I woke up and this dude was in the house. Flacco was barking. I was in bed and I thought it was you, Mom." "Me?" "Yeah, I thought you had come home for something." Lincoln helped steady the door as Roy, red-faced with effort, tightened the screw. Roy looked at Lincoln, and Lincoln looked at Roy, their breathing mingling in the cold night air. They both said hi and smiled. They went inside to a dinner of enchiladas, sopa, and frijoles. Lincoln's mother had come home early after the telephone call and had had time to boil beans and bring down a steak from the freezer. Lincoln and Roy feasted like starved warriors. Lincoln's mother was still worrying. She twisted her napkin until it fell apart in shreds. "Do you think he'll come back?" Neither Lincoln nor Roy looked up when they said nah. They were busy scooping up the meat with rips of tortilla. "Do you think he works this area?" Again, Roy and Lincoln grunted no. Lincoln's mother said, "You took Flacco's bandages off? How's his leg?" Flacco lay near the butcher block, blinking sad eyes. Later he would get a handful of scraps and a send-off to the back porch. "His leg is better." Roy, running his napkin over his mouth, asked, "How's your knee?" "It hurts. Coach said it's made me practice, but I stopped when it started hurting." Lincoln pushed away his plate. "He says I can't start." Roy let his napkin drop onto his empty plate and nibbled on his last piece of tortilla. "What a punk. I'll be there tomorrow to straighten him out if he gives you trouble." Lincoln liked that. He pictured Roy and his coach throwing punches in front of the entire school. He gathered the plates, but when he started to do the dishes, his mother shooed him away. "Go bathe. You need to soak your knee." Lincoln felt relieved. He was tired. He ran the water scalding hot and nearly cried as he lowered his body into the bath, piled high with bubbles. He soaked, scrubbed, and went limp with laziness. The water felt good. After he got out, dried off, and dressed, he went into the living room, combing his hair. His mother said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you that you got some mail. It's on the mantle." Lincoln picked up a small envelope with no return address. Tearing it open, he took out 4 dirty $1 bills. It was from Tony. The bet was paid. Lincoln looked up at his mother when she asked, "Who's the letter from?" "It's not a letter, just money. Remember the 49ers bet with Tony? He's paid up." Roy, who was on the couch, rattled the newspaper and said, "Yeah, I remember that game. The Niners clobbered them." His mother said she didn't remember. She asked if Lincoln wanted dessert, but he said no. He said good night, went to his room, and did his Spanish homework, the easiest, and some of his English homework, the next easiest. But Tony kept coming back to his mind. Lincoln recalled the time when they were 7 and went door to door looking for work with a broom and poor boy grins. They figured they would be rich by lunchtime, but they were hired to sweep only one driveway, for which they were paid $1. They bought a soda and a bag of sunflower seeds and sat in the bleachers of a playground, watching older kids run around laughing and beating each other with plastic bats. Lincoln closed his books and, sighing, switched off his lamp. He closed his eyes, and pictures of Tony flashed through his mind as he edged toward sleep. The next morning, his mother came to his bedroom. "Déjame ver esa rodilla. Let me see your knee." Lincoln, rubbing his eyes, screamed, "Ay, your hands are cold," when his mother reached under the blankets for his leg. She rolled up the leg of his pajama bottoms and looked at his knee, her brow knitted with worry. "Does it hurt?" Lincoln raised his leg and said, "Only when I do this." He crossed his eyes and let his tongue fall out. "En serio?" his mother snapped. "Nah, it's okay." He rose up on his elbows and parted the curtain. The day was overcast and cold, but the trees were still. No wind, no spiraling leaves, no squirrels jumping from limb to limb. His mother left his bedroom saying, "You better clean up your room. It's dirty. Ándale, I'll fix you breakfast." Lincoln got up slowly. He hobbled to his dresser for a fresh T-shirt, socks, and jeans. He picked up a sweater from the floor, smelled the armpits, and decided it was not that bad. Lincoln ate and went to school. He dreaded running into Monica, so he sneaked up and down the hallways between classes. He felt stupid. Why would he want to give her the brush off? Between history and Spanish, they nearly bumped into one another. Monica, who was laughing with a friend, suddenly stopped. She looked down and walked away, leaving Lincoln biting his lip. He ate lunch on a cement bench. He could hear the pep band in the cafeteria and imagined the cheerleaders jumping about like the sparrows he watched on the dead lawn. He ripped into his sandwich, tuna today, and threw a crust at the sparrows who scattered upward, then came down to peck at his offering. He crunched on barbecue potato chips and wondered what his breath would be like. Tuna sandwich and barbecue potato chips, a deadly combination. He reached into his lunch bag and was glad to find an apple, even though it was bruised. Durkins walked by with a hot dog in his hand. "Hey, bro," he said. "How come you ain't in the cafeteria? Coach is going to introduce the players." Lincoln bit into his apple and said, "I don't like those things." Durkins cleared his throat. "Sorry you're not starting." "It's better I don't. Anyway, I hate to say it, but I think you're going to lose." "Why do you say you, not we? Aren't you part of us?" "It's not that." "Then what's the big deal?" "Nothing." "Nothing? Why'd you say we were going to lose?" Lincoln got up, shaking out his lunch bag onto the lawn for the sparrows. Without looking at Durkins, he said, "I got homework to do. I'll see you at practice." That was when Coach Asetis would gather his players around him for a pep talk and rap about school pride. Lincoln wandered in the direction of the library. The students were leaving the cafeteria, the pep band still blowing hard on trumpets and trombones. The drums hurt Lincoln's ears, and someone bumped against his knee. He climbed the steps of the library to get out of the way. When he turned, he saw Monica at the table, alone. He looked back at the crowd. Coach Asetis, in an ill-fitting suit and a Columbus hat with a plum, was marching among the students. Lincoln thought he looked like an idiot. He turned around and saw Monica again and figured he should apologize to her. Sighing, head down, he walked in. The librarian looked up, stern-faced. Lincoln forced a smile at her and walked over to the table where Monica sat. She glanced up and looked down quickly, her pencil moving more busily across the page. "Hi," he said. Monica turned the page in her binder. "I'm sorry about yesterday. It's weird, but our house got broken into." Monica stopped writing for a second, then started again, biting her lip. "Yeah, I was home and this guy busted open the front door." Lincoln saw a half-eaten apple hidden between a pile of books and her backpack. He picked it up, tossed it into the air, bit into it, and said, "I just had a tuna sandwich, and I need all the breath control I can get." Monica swiped the apple from his hand. "Lincoln, you're selfish." Lincoln thought about that for a moment. Maybe it was true. He swiped the apple back from her and took another bite. The librarian hurried over and said firmly, "No eating in here." "But I'm hungry," Lincoln pleaded. "Eat outside," she said. "I can smell tuna sandwich on you." Monica and Lincoln looked at one another, almost cracking up. Monica gathered her books and sweater, and they left. "Is it true about your house?" "Yeah, but there's a lot of other things bothering me, too. Tony, mi carnal, is mad at me." Monica stopped to put on her sweater. "Why is he mad?" "It's a long story. It has to do with a viejo at a thrift store in the city." "Thrift store?" "Yeah, as I said, it's a long story. I don't know how I can explain it. It's one of those things where you had to be there to know what I'm saying. You know what I mean?" "I think so," Monica answered, unsure. They walked in silence, and when they came to a bench, they sat down and watched two squirrels claw up a pine tree and disappear among the branches. Lincoln thought of taking her hand, but he knew better. He was glad when the bell sounded. The temptation was too great. "I have algebra," Monica said, shouldering her backpack. She took 2 sticks of gum from her purse and gave one to Lincoln. "I have geography," Lincoln said as he unwrapped the gum and pushed it into his mouth. "You're coming tonight, aren't you?" "Of course." Lincoln walked Monica to her classroom and then had to run, hurt leg or not, to his class. He couldn't risk getting a tardy slip. After school, he gathered his books and walked slowly to the gym, his untied laces swinging about his ankles. James caught up with him. "Coach shouldn't have talked to you like that, Link," James said, swinging a pair of Air Jordans and biting into a Baby Ruth. He could see your knee is busted. Lincoln, one hand in his pocket and the other gripping a strap of his backpack, just shook his head and said, "We're going to get whipped." "No, we're not. We beat them last time." "That was last time, loco. We're a better team." "That's what you think." James didn't say anything. He followed Lincoln into the gym, where most of the players were already in the bleachers. They were waiting for the pep talk. Grady, the center, was arguing with Zimmer, a guard, over a bag of corn nuts. Buckley, the other guard, and sometimes forward, was doing his math and counting on his fingers. The rest of them were pulling and pushing each other. Coach was with the janitor, looking toward the ceiling and pointing to an overhead light that was out. He shook his head in agreement, laughing, and turned to his players. Clapping his hands, he shouted, "Listen up." "Quiet, Grady." Grady put those corn nuts away. "This is our last practice." Immediately, the players stopped fooling around. Coach looked at his clipboard and index finger, working down the page, read out the starters: Grady, Zimmer, Buckley, Mitchell, and Kaler. "Kaler?" James said. "I like my name. Snake James Kaler, starter." Lincoln hurt inside. He had known that he wasn't going to start, but it still hurt. James looked over at Lincoln and whispered, "Sorry, man. He's all wrong." Coach said he's called out the backups to the center and point guard, Doyle and Parrish. Then he sucked in a lot of old, stinky gym air and began his lecture on manhood, tradition, and school spirit. Lincoln tuned out by peeling a blister on his thumb.